Hey there, this is Troy Yamaguchi for +2, and today is our first installment of our Lawless Time weekly meta update. We'll describe the latest developments in the Premier meta, analyzing what's being played and why to help you make responsible deck building decisions. In these updates, we'll talk about what events are upcoming, what has happened recently, and how this affects the decks we choose to play going forward. And as this is week 0, notable things that have happened recently. Well, the set is released. It's out. Rotation is here. It's an exciting world of mid-range unlimited, where if you take off your glasses, all of the decks kind of look the same, and none of them feel very good. But fear not. I promise that there are still exciting and competent Star Wars Unlimited decks. They do in fact exist, and I'll be talking about some of them shortly. In terms of upcoming events, there are a few cash tournaments this weekend to celebrate release weekend, and we'll see what people brought to those tournaments. This will also give us a decent spread of decks to look at next week, and looking further down the line, we have about a month until the real tournaments start happening, with PQs at the beginning of next month and sectors beginning shortly thereafter. These are what we're really looking to prepare for, so that's going to be the angle that we take for the next about month or so. In terms of what's good, the set hasn't been released yet, so there have been no tournaments, but just based on what I've personally tried so far, these are the easy finds in terms of competent strategies. It's definitely not everything, but I think this spread of decks is a good start, and we'll be going over deck lists for each of them in just a minute. Who's in the hot seat? It's always good to prepare for a meta, just keeping in mind whatever you think will be both strong and popular. If you're thinking about a boogeyman or a starting point for this format, my first guess would definitely be these two pilot leaders, Boba Fett and Luke. And the reason for this is pretty simple. These are just decks that have existed in the past. They've been decks that people have played. They've never been very good. I've never been a huge fan of these decks whatsoever, but if there was ever a format where either Boba or Luke would have above a 50% win rate, this is the one. And the reason for this is that in law format, removal options across the board are just really bad. And so is the top end. The result of this is that games are pretty reliably ending on 7 resources or sooner. Units just tend to stick around this format for slightly too long with anything to be said about them. The tall, slow decks, you think of like the blue-green villain archetype from the past, or even like something like Palpatine, these are just like generally not what they used to be and mostly non-existent. And part of the reason for this is that your stabilizing bombs have been removed from the format, something like a overwhelming barrage just to convert your board into stabilization, and inevitability cards like Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight. These just like aren't here anymore. The card pool is pretty barren. I mean, this is what happens when you go from 7 sets to 4. You just don't have all the tools anymore. And all of these factors, I think, favor these linear pilot leaders. So for these reasons, I've placed these two guys in the hot seat as the decks to watch. This is what I currently have for Boba Yellow. For all these lists, again, the set has only just released. These are samples meant to be your starting point. And one of the things that we'll be looking out for is just how these decks are optimized as time goes on. Things that this deck has going for it: using your leader flip, you do get to kind of just build your own bomb, stabilization, and removal, and this is all good. You're filling holes that the format is asking you for. The yellow in this deck provides some really good interaction. The only notable card that is not included here is the 4-cost upgrade, Shadows of Stygian Prime, I think it's called. That card is incredibly powerful, but I think almost every red deck right now should be running some amount of Constable. I see usually 2. I mean, if you can play 3, it can't hurt. You just consider it part of your interaction suite. And in this deck specifically, both the 2-cost Tricolor Droid and Hold for Questioning especially are like very powerful cards. So I don't think the upgrade, which is really expensive and it gets constabled, you're like pretty put out. I just don't think that card is necessary. What would I like to see from this deck going forward? Well, this deck has access to Garinden and any form of hand control, especially something that's pretty cheap like Garinden. It gives you the ability just to play around whatever you happen to lose to. So I think that gives this a deck some legs going forward, even in a metagame that should be prepared for it. And also, something I like about this as compared to its versions in the past is that it has relevant ground units. I think being able to play BT1 and 000 on 2 and 3 gives your deck some good versatility, so you're not just, every game just playing spaceship, 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 and opening yourself out to answers that way. I like that as well. So I don't know. Generally, I mean, I just have to, I'm like personally biased against the pilot leaders. With Boba especially, this guy has just like always tended to fall off the map in previous format as deck list improves, as people's preparation improved. But I mean, this format is not the previous format. Your ability to answer units now is so much weaker than it was before. Think like Power of the Dark Side was like this guy's #1 op, and that just obviously is not capable of being played anymore. So this guy might be a serious choice, and we'll just have to see how it develops over time. Next, here's my starting point for Luke Data Vault. This deck, just by virtue of being like an actual space meme, like you have 30 to 40 space units, it's, I think, a little more vulnerable to preparation in some ways. If you just run against some freak that is playing just a perfect curve of ambush ship, which does exist and will be featured in just a bit, you probably just don't get to play the game. You just lose on the spot. But is this a real thing to worry about? Definitely like not yet. I mean, people will just be starting out. People will just play whatever it was they were going to play anyway. So this leader is also doing some pretty powerful things. What is it doing well? Well, in a world full of constables, your leader is immune, and for everything else, there's GUUBACCA. GUUBACCA alone puts just a ton of pressure on certain decks to have that out or lose, and obviously you don't just get to blindly slam it against everything. The card is just still incredibly powerful, so that's a good thing as well. And when Luke deploys, like obviously this guy just becomes One Punch Man, and the answers to him are very limited. Again, it's the same concept of Boba. Your leader is contributing a unique suite of removal and reliable top end, and those are things that are missing from the current format. So there's a real thesis for these decks being good. I like Hot Shot Maneuver a lot. I like Air Superiority. I mean, these cards are not too exciting, but they're just cheap removal, and you're not paying for to eliminate your opponent's board. I mean, this is all good things. What would I like to see from this deck going forward? A lot of red decks also like being in yellow right now. I think those two colors work well together. So I think that's something to look at for sure. The green here is not contributing anything of real substance outside of the HP, which is fine. I mean, your deck is just 40 spaceships anyway, so the consistency hit is kind of neither here nor there. Chewie, of course, is great, but outside of that, it's not contributing very much of substance. And the yellow has more flexible interaction, as well as Snapshot Han, which is a great pump, and I think probably better against a human opponent than just throwing Chewie on top of everything and praying. I do expect Luke to be pretty relevant. He's powerful, he's strong, he hits hard, and it's just my personal bias that prevents me from saying too much about this guy that's great for the time being, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this guy make some sort of, meta-defining push in the next couple of weeks. So, with a context of these pilots as just a good starting point, in terms of other competent strategies, there are some other decks to think about. And if your favorite deck isn't here, don't worry. I still have just a few suspicious deck lists that I also want to highlight towards the end of the video, and we'll get to look at those after we take a look at these guys right here. First off, for the rest of the good decks, Lando so far has been the pretty much only slower top-end base strategy that has seemed even remotely human in my testing. I've tried a bunch of things. I've tried like the credit Java and even like the Krennics of the world, and just the thing is like the villain card pool is just so horrible right now. So like these leaders that read pretty well are just like don't have anything to be doing of substance. But Lando and Blue over here, by contrast, this guy is actually doing something pretty powerful. The bombs here are super relevant. The 8 costs are great. Liberty is a tremendously broken card. I think out of all of the expensive things that people are attempting to ramp out right now, this is the one that feels the most impactful. Whenever things hits the board, again, answers are pretty limited, and the tempo advantage and just the sheer damage this thing outputs is fantastic. This card is really legit. Lando in Blue, I mean, I'm just personally addicted to gambling, so I really enjoy just finding whatever way I can to resolve double Anakin, and to this credit, this gets there like pretty reliably. There's some issues with this list that I have right now. The call for your hero power here is Cunning, which in this list is 80% to hit, which honestly is too low. But you do have Bix to bail you out even if you miss, and if your deck is not doing Anakin things, it's definitely just better to be played in green. What else would I like to see from this deck going forward? Getting out of the first 5 turns of the game intact can be pretty suspicious, and that's like another thing that necessitates these bigger sentinels. Oftentimes these guys, I mean, and they're also blue, so like again, this is another obstacle to keep your deck from having like a great credit call every single turn, but 80% is like kind of enough. And again, Bix will bail you out if you miss in those weird game states. It might be okay. The thing about the Sentinels is that oftentimes you're relying on these guys to just trade up like 2 or 3 for 1 against other mid-range decks. And they do frequently, just because the ways to remove them are, once again, just pretty few and far between. But that to me sounds pretty fake. I'm not a huge fan of some of the early game sack that's going on in this deck. So I think this deck definitely could be better in green. It sounds better in green to me, but like giving up Anakin is so tough. I do have a green list, and we should take a look at that right now. This is green Lando. The things that this is providing you at the cost of not having any fun cards named Skywalker in it is just a more stable curve of low and medium guys. You think something like your Typhoid costs 4 instead of 5. I mean, that's like pretty relevant. Hilariously, this is the deck and the colorway that has this perfect curve of space ambushers. It potentially reaches all the way up to 6. There's like a 5-cost ship that's also just blue ace, and a 6-cost ship that's like a 4/6 raid one or something like that. So if you hate losing to space decks, I just have to assume that this color combination gets you there. Although like I haven't focus tested the matchup personally. This deck seems good. This archetype seems pretty legit. Mando capturing across arenas is really great stabilization. As I mentioned, like playing Liberty on 6 is just diabolical. There are just way too many games where I swear all I do is I flip my leader, I make credits, I slam Liberty, I claim, I hit them with Liberty. They're just like down so much tempo. Like this thing is super legit. Going forward, I think Splash Base is definitely a consideration for this leader. You can just play whatever you want. And even just for Lando Green, I think the Data Vault consistency hit is probably relevant. It's like a Han 1 green type of theory. You really want to be drawing Liberty. I can't stress that enough. That card is broken. So 30 HP might be the truth, but I just thought that this would be a decent starting point for now. I mean, having some cushion is great. And you can, as opposed to like other Data Vault cards right now, I actually do not struggle to find 60 good cards to put in this Lando deck. And there's actually like a bunch of, cards that you like to play more of, in fact. So it can accommodate Data Vault. I think it'll be, maybe the jury will still be out on whether 30 or 33 is really the way to go. In terms of other mid-range strategies, Jyn has also felt like a pretty strong aggressive leaning deck. The deck has some powerful curve outs and a good advantage backbone in every one of your hammerheads mid to late game, just representing essentially a +2. So that's all good, although beyond this, honestly, when I play this deck, my mind just goes blank. I click legitimately random buttons without any care what happens to my board, and somehow this leads to an aggressive negotiations finish. I guess, I don't know, like maybe just the games where you open Chio Fane, you just have so many cards and they die on 6 every single time. It's honestly hard for me to articulate what makes this deck better in some games than others, but it's doing something good. And I think that it would be surprising if this deck wasn't just around in some capacity. A surprise include on this list might be Leia Data Vault, and the secret here is not that exciting. She is just more or less the same deck as Obi-Wan, except with 8 more HP and more restore units. So this combined with probably just the best good stuff color combo in the game makes for a competent, if more or less unexciting pile of cards to be playing. It is actually kind of fun to manage your hand in the deck with the disclose requirements, and it makes for an interesting deck building puzzle. And there's like other things you can do in here. Like you can play Chancellor just to turn on my friend Anakin. Like there's some stuff happening. Is this deck good? Like honestly, in my heart, I feel like it's probably too fair to ever be a truly optimal choice. It's kind of just a stat check deck, but in the world that we live in now, she seems like a reasonable thing to be doing. Racing your store is pretty tough, and your leader hits them as a 5/8, and then if she untaps, she's threatening as a 6/9. If aggressive negotiations get involved, I mean, your leader is like actually taking off half of her life by herself. So these things in combination, I mean, there's just like something here. I just don't know if it'll ever be like truly optimal, but it's a decent deck to be playing. I don't mind this deck at all. Speaking of, Obi Vergence Temple is the best deck in the room if you can draw a Consular and win a coin toss every single match. That should just not be questioned. That start is definitely the best thing to be doing if you have, Yugi Moto powers. Outside of this, the deck definitely has some additional upside. So like all other Force synergies in the past, you pair really well into other ground-based mid-range deck. And this deck does just have certain hands that seem unbeatable. Although, here's the issue. I do think that if we're approaching this metagame with the idea that pilot and space decks are good, this deck should have a hard time. I mean, one big play from either space strategies or even just putting those aside, just and aggressive negotiations hit from literally anyone will chop off like half of your health, which sounds like a pretty scary place to be. Although I will say the 5 cost Ghost as a 6/7 Sentinel in space after you upgrade it is a great find. That card's pretty good. And it's possible that this becomes enough just to hold it down against space decks. I think I would have to see this deck perform going forward and just see how the meta shapes out before I put it like any too much more emphasis on it. I'm just kind of waiting and seeing where I am right now on this. I just don't know if the power is worth the cost of having 25 HP. It's pretty relevant, I think. And finally, here is Talzin. She's in a very similar situation. This deck, I swear, is for sickos. You take like 5,000 game actions, repeat annihilating your opponent's entire ground arena every single turn. They do not get to play the game, and on 6 resources, you look up, you're up like 4 units, and you're somehow still like struggling to close out the game. I don't know. I kind of like it. This deck is fun. You do have sequencing on your flip turn that matters, and the only issue is just like, can it beat reliable? Can it reliably beat stray strategies? I just can't believe that. I think something really terrible has to happen to them for that to be the case. You can make the argument that this deck would be good in red. You do get No Disintegrations and Let's Call It War, which are good cards, but I just don't know if those solve your problems. The deck still, regardless of anything, just does not push damage super well. So if you're not just full clearing your opponent's board every single turn, you're kind of floundering. I guess this yellow deck, you could play Commandeer to answer its space problems. I think that might be an answer that's worth trying. I don't know. Somehow I still doubt that gets you there. You could I don't know, play anyone on 2 and play second anyone on 3, and then on 4, Assassin clear their 2-drop, and then on 5, Commandeer try to 2-for-1 them and be in the game that way. That sounds a bit human, but I think ultimately, while Talzin is doing something really strong, the disparities in its matchups would have me worried to take this to a major tournament for sure. If it can be built to withstand space, this deck has always just been the ground arena apocalypse, so it could work, but this is an answer you'd need to go out and find and then just strictly verify just to make sure you're not coping. So those are the good decks, or at least the easy finds that I've been able to come up with. Question of what else is out there. And in terms of other leaders to look at, these are the ones that have my attention right now. And most of these are just essentially the same deck, if I'm being honest. You have Tobias Beckett, who, as it turns out, is like a cool, non-traditional combo deck, but all this is just kind of a way of dressing it up as yet another click aggressive negotiations and the game type strategies. Kylo Ren is, I think, just too powerful of a leader to completely ignore and write off, although his previous green shell just does not seem to have anything going for it anymore. And the red version, while more or less intact, just seems a bit dirtily and slow. I mean, games are ending quickly. Kylo does produce double Anakin, which I like, and this might be enough to live until you get to flip your leader. It might. And then everything else here is honestly just some version of a yellow-red aggro scam. I mean, Kazuda might be fine in blue or green, but the end result is the same. There's just definitely space in the meta for something attempting to be the fastest deck in the room. So we'll take a quick look at the 2 decks here that I like the best. Tobias Red is a really cool deck. I'm glad it exists, and it has kind of an unreliable game plan. A lot of your deck's power does hinge on how good you are at drawing stolen AT Hauler, which essentially is just super laser tech on crack. I mean, this thing ramps 2, draws 1, and hits your opponent for 8. This card is so turbo in this deck. And if Tobias could play 9 of them, it would probably just be a tier 1 strategy easily. But yeah, at the end of the game, this is mostly just an aggressive negotiations deck with a neater way of getting there than most. I'm really not sure on the ratios of cards to give your opponent as opposed to the ratio of cards to hit them with, and I'm not sure if this kind of approach will ever truly be optimal, but out of all the decks I've played, this is the most interesting one, and it's doing the most things, so that's something to be said for that for sure. Other things of note, Chrysanthemum is a super legit card. This card is Maul on 5. So when you see your hauler, you're looking at just tons of damage. It's 4 to 8 damage from the hauler, 4 from your leader. The Chrysanthemum Overwhelm. You click aggressive negotiations on 6 for +5 or +6. So there are some good things happening here. It's a very fun deck to build and play, and I would love to see this optimized. And if this makes its way into the tier 1 contention, that would be good for a little bit, and then I'd probably just get tired of dying to aggressive negotiations and start complaining. But at least it's interesting, and it's doing something pretty unique. And then out of all the aggro scams, this guy is the scammiest of them all. I rock with the Baka heavy. This like might look like a meme, but I really do promise there's like something to this leader that I'm seeing. The secret about aggro decks in Star Wars Unlimited is that so far they've actually all just been like fast tempo decks in disguise. They're described like more accurately by their ability to just accidentally create threats while happening to clear your board than they are by the amount of raw damage that they're just able to jam to face. I think Sabine ECL and Han 2 ECLs were like more of tempo decks than just a straight face hunter type strategy, and even JTL Vader meets this description. So Chewbacca, more than any of the other aggro scams that I'm thinking about, is accomplishing this kind of idea. Your leader is super powerful. You have the ability not only to use him as removal, but to cheat resources with the credit that he makes in some ways. Literally, I think all that matters in this deck is how you navigate the first 4 to 5 turns of the game. And so to this end, you can really just hyper tune your deck to be crammed with all the possible answers that you'll need to see in that time frame. So that's another deck building advantage there. In addition, there are just 6 legal copies of Chan Syndulla available in the game, and we're playing none of them in this list. So I feel like there just has to be something to this Chewbacca guy. I don't know if this like goo pile of funny synergies is the answer. I played some amount, and every card has been like definitely shining in different game states, but somehow I just think there's something here with this guy. The board's getting gummed up with units as a symptom of everyone playing 2/4s. I'm definitely looking for opportunities to play ATDP Occupier for 1 or free. I do like this card a lot. Hot Shot Maneuver in this deck is more or less like, it's just daring it raid with action cheat, but even that is pretty good for what you're needing to do. When you're able to throw a Sork Blast on top of your flip turns, it bombs out their board crazy style. The 3/1 Rebel gives you an additional push on your flip turn as well in that sense. You're really playing this deck just to deprive them of board presence before you start jamming to face with everything. And there's a lot of tools that you can cram in here in the deck to do this. So if that's not what we're doing in the straight aggro scam world, there's also a possibility of seizing a tempo lead with your leader and then playing Cham and Broken Horn to catch back up to eventually deploy like the Tricolor Luke or K2. There's just a lot to watch, I think, with this Chewie guy. So I'm really excited to see what people come up with. I mean, there's Splash Base, you can play a space strategy and put the Chewie pilot on someone, but you know, a lot to be doing, and I think this guy is someone to watch out for. So those are the decks, a lot to go over this time, and we'll see how things develop as the format matures. I think, in short, my takeaways for now are just that space is like a reasonable starting place for a boogeyman or something to just, you have to at least make sure that your deck doesn't fall over dead to space strategies. And we'll just have to see how much of this appears as the format goes on and what kind of like other answers exist out there. As we've mentioned, we're looking to make this a weekly series, so just to be able to track how things develop. Next week, we should have some more reliable online data, as well as some of these cash tournaments to peruse. Again, PQs are in about 3 weeks, and that's more enough time to prepare. So there's always an answer. It's just up to us to find it. The best place for questions is the comment section. So if you've got the sauce, please do share with the class. Although if you tell me it's Rio Durant Red, I probably won't believe you, but I'll still read your clickbait nonetheless. And that's all for this week. I'll catch you on the next.